You're thinking of starting your own online business and you're considering web design. Well, today I'm sitting down with Paige Brunton, who is brilliant at teaching people how to become successful web designers. She's not only had her own incredibly successful web design business, but she now teaches thousands of people how to do it too. I was one of them. I wanted to have her on today to break down what's really necessary to start a web design business. So we talk about how to narrow your niche, the biggest stumbling blocks and surprises that web designers often encounter, how to get clients, and how successful you can actually even really be at web design. And yes, we do talk specific numbers. So stick around until the end, because at the very end, we're going to talk about a special, totally free 3-day event that Paige has coming up that's all about how to build a successful web design business. And there are resources in there for you, even if you're already a web designer. I still go to this event every time she hosts it because it's so amazing. So I'll also share a bunch of other free resources where you can learn more from Paige. And so let's get started. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited to talk to you about this. So my audience is WordPress kind of heavy because I come from the WordPress world. And you actually had a really interesting experiment where you actually tried out WordPress versus Squarespace. I'll link to that in the description below. But would you talk a little bit about that experiment?
So let me start with why I thought I had to do the experiment. So integrity is important to me. I want to make sure that I'm recommending good things to my people. And when I would go onto that page load speed tester thing and I would test my website, didn't do that well.
Like page speed and like HTTP requests and
Yeah,
like
exactly.
all the like stats and things.
Yes. And it was like, your website's not doing so great. And I was like, hey, I know about building websites. Like, what the hell? I did the things right. And so I was like, okay, well, Google says that these things relate to your SEO and how much you're going to come up in the search results. And I was like, yeah, well, that's important. And a vast majority of our website traffic comes from SEO and comes from the bajillion blog posts, which I've written over the years. And so I was like, you know what? I need to go figure out, is my blog being sort of penalized or my website being penalized for this thing, which I can't fix? I looked at can I fix these things? And basically the answer is no. And so I moved my entire website and hundreds of blog posts onto a Showit website with a WordPress blog. So Showit doesn't have its own blogging thing. So it's the blog is through WordPress, if that makes sense. And so I was like, and then I'm just going to wait for a few months and see what the change in traffic, if there is any, is.
And you did all this in stealth mode, right?
Oh, yeah.
You didn't want there to be a blip in traffic or anything.
Yeah. I mean, there was I didn't try to do it in stealth mode, but we just didn't announce it or anything. But I'm not really on social media. If I was on social media, I might make quick updates like this. It wasn't super intentional, but it just didn't seem like a big enough thing. It was I want to write the results report in a blog post, for example, but I wasn't gonna I write long blog posts, not hey, by the way, move the website, whatever. So yeah, I mean, stealth mode, maybe. Not intentional, but I guess it was
intentional. So
yeah, cool. No, it wasn't really. It also took us so long to move that website. It took us forever. And then my one team member who got assigned to the job to do it, she was pulling her hair out at the plugins and the things, and it was not good. And it cost us definitely way more per month for sure. But anyways, moved the website, moved the blog posts, moved everything, waited a few months just to see what the difference was in traffic. So I also retested my website on that page speed insights thing. It did significantly better in terms of the score. But then when I looked at my traffic, it made literally no difference. And I was like, that's interesting. So we left it there for a few months as well, because we're we want to see, does it change, whatever. So anyways, my Squarespace website didn't do so hot on the page insights test. And then when I moved it onto Showit, it did better on the test, but the actual SEO, in fact, was absolutely nothing. And I was like, okay, so it doesn't seem to actually make a practical difference in terms of your rankings and everything. So I can happily go back to Squarespace, one, knowing that I'm recommending something that's, yep, cool. It works super well. It's so much easier to use. It's so much cheaper. It's just the number of emails and things being this plugin's fighting with that plugin and blah. And the amount of time that my tech girl had to spend managing that website when it was just for a few months on the other platform, I was like, yeah, that was really annoying.
Right.
So anyway, so yeah, there was no change. And so I feel also in terms of is Squarespace better or worse for SEO or whatever, when people are oh, well, forget what the statistic is, but anyways, it's like most websites or this percentage of websites that ranking page one of Google are on WordPress. I'm like, yeah, but also there are more websites on WordPress because it's just been around for longer and everything. So obvious, that's not really telling you much. But I feel like taking the exact same content, and you also can't test it by you post the same content on two different websites, because then Google doesn't like perfectly duplicated content if you don't have the exact same content, that it also wouldn't give you an accurate idea. So I feel like the only real test you could do is literally the one that we did, is have it here, check your traffic, move it over there, check your traffic, and see what the difference is. And so that's what we did. So I feel like it was fairly, I mean, not scientific, but like fairly accurate in my opinion test.
Oh yeah, I think so. I love that you did it because like you said, it's hard to try and get an accurate read. And you're right, like that statistic, like 40% of the world's websites are built on WordPress because for so many years it was really the only game in town. That's why I built so many sites in WordPress.
Yeah.
So that's such a good point. Okay, so let me ask you another couple questions about this, because picking your platform is really important when you're trying to decide whether or not you want to become a web designer. And you can choose multiple platforms. There are plenty of designers who do, but it does make your life easier in the beginning if you kind of get married to one. So you said this actually twice in your answer, that you spent more money on the WordPress site than you did on the Squarespace site, which is interesting because one of WordPress's big things is it's free. It's a free platform, right? So could you talk about that?
Yeah, so there is a free version of WordPress. But then when you actually get into building your website, you're like, oh, but I want to have my Instagram here, or I want to have this feature, or I want to have this pop-up, or I want to have this certain analytics something, or I don't know, like all these different things that you like most people want in a website. And then when you start adding those things, then you start paying for all those individual plugins and whatever. Or also if your website starts getting higher traffic, then you're also paying based off like the volume of traffic to your website. Then it's suddenly not cheaper anymore. So it depends on the person and the situation as to if it will be cheaper or more expensive. I would say for us in our specific situation, it was definitely quite a bit more expensive. Squarespace, I think for most people in most situations, for what most people want on websites, is probably going to be cheaper most of the time. There will be exceptions to that rule. But again, if you want the most basic website in the world, then yeah, cool, going on like free WordPress is going to be the cheapest thing. But if you want something a bit more robust and looks the way you want it to look and all those things, then yeah, it might not be.
It actually does something. If you need your website to actually sell stuff or convert people or build your list or something, you need a website that actually works. You're going to have to add more functionality in. And on WordPress, that's going to
cost you every time. Yeah, exactly. Right. Whereas Squarespace is pretty included, unless you want to do e-commerce, in which case then you could add for that. But for most things, it's the vast majority of things is one plan.
Right. Right. Yes, I totally agree. By the way, having built so many sites in WordPress and then moved to Squarespace, it's a fantastic experience.
They literally don't know what they're missing until they go onto it. And then they're like, oh, I get it.
Right? The whole drag and drop editor. I don't know if I told you this, I started doing web design. The whole reason I like switched was I rediscovered Squarespace right after they launched Fluid Engine.
Yeah.
And it was good. Oh, the drag and drop and the it's just so lovely. So that's why we work in Squarespace. We're big fans, obviously. So next question, can you really start with nothing? Like you don't really know design, you can't really spell HTML. Can you start with nothing?
I have a few points I want to make on this. One, in my family, there are 4 children. 2 of them have computer science degrees, and I am not that person. And so both of my brothers, they are the like developer, computer sciencey, they can code you, develop you, whatever. I look at code and I'm like, I just can't. My brain does not work in that way. I tried learning, it's just not for me. And so the good thing is that you don't need a computer science degree anymore to be a website designer. So what my brother studied in school and then what they went on and did is they build stuff for the non-technical people like myself. And they are like managing the back end of data processing systems and stuff. And if I walk by them when they're working, I'm like, what are you doing? I don't know. So anyways, it's just if you go study computer science, what you do for a job is not build websites for small businesses. That's not what that study leads you into. So there's that. And then the other thing to know, I did a survey of like 770 website designers. And I asked them things like, what was your job before this? And like, how much experience did you have building websites before and everything? And the vast majority of people did not do anything to do with like websites and marketing and whatever beforehand. And so a lot of them were like self-taught like I was. And so let me just clarify. We want to provide a genuine service to people. We are not just like ripping off small businesses with like terrible work or anything. That's not like what I believe in. But there is a difference between I need to go study at university and I know nothing, but I'm going to offer this service. Like the in-betweeny bit is educate yourself on how to do the thing. So yes, you need to learn about creating quality websites and learning about conversion on websites and what's best practice on websites and like how do you design something that looks good versus not good and the best practices of design and everything. So that is important to learn, but that doesn't mean you need to go 40 grand in debt and go to university to do that by any means. So yes, you can start from literally nothing. I did my experience of building websites. At the very beginning was I just wanted to build a blog. And so I Googled how do you build a blog? And I tried WordPress and a bunch of other things, but then found Squarespace and then started using that for the blog and taught myself how to build a website just from like playing around with it in the back end. And then over time, watched more videos and did different things and just continued working on it and improved. And so you need to, if you want to offer a service, yes, you should be able to genuinely do the thing, but it doesn't mean you have to go to school, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like so many people who think they want to be website designers, the first thing they do is they think like, oh, I need to go learn like HTML and I need to go learn CSS and everything. And they start learning it and then they're like, oh God. Some people love it and so that's great. And so then they do that. But even once they do that, then even if you are really good at those things, you realize that no one wants a website that you like HTML coded anymore. That is not how websites are built these days. They're built on platforms like Squarespace or WordPress or whatever. And so it's not like necessary to do the job that we do.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And actually can kind of be a detriment even, I
Yeah.
think, because you're focused on the wrong things. You really want to be a successful web designer. You need to know some design, you need to know some marketing. Like those three things are what make you successful.
Those are what matter.
Like, yeah, those are the biggies. So let's talk about some nuts and bolts, because the biggest question, of course, that I always hear from my clients, even who aren't web designers, but the biggest question always is, how do I get more clients? So how do I find clients? So if someone's really interested in being a web designer, what would you tell them about like how to get started with this business and get clients in the door?
Okay, I will plug something quickly. On October 21st, 22nd, 23rd, I'm hosting something called the Profitable and Productive Web Designer Bootcamp. So if you are watching or listening to this before then you should definitely register because one entire day is dedicated to how to find clients. So I will give you the Spark Notes version of the answer here, but also if you want like an entire hour on that and also like an opportunity to ask me questions about it, then come to that. That'd be very helpful. We'll put a link in the description. But generally, how do you find clients? There are many, many, many marketing strategies. And the most important thing is you find the one that you don't hate and that you can actually commit to doing in the long run. And so, little example, I'm not a huge fan of Instagram. I just don't like it. I'm just not a fan. And so I used to, at the very beginning of my business, be like, well, design is a visual thing. All your ideal clients are on Instagram. You have to be on Instagram. And so I was just, I was blogging because I liked doing that, but I was also on Instagram because I felt like I had to do that. And over time, I realized that all my clients were coming from my blog and not Instagram. So that gave me like permission to basically be like, screw this, I can stop. So I just like fully quit Instagram and saw no effect to my business because I just had another marketing strategy going. Now, I'm not saying that you need to blog. And I'm also not saying that you can't do Instagram. If you want to do Instagram, it is an incredible marketing strategy. What I'm saying is you can do Instagram. You can have your own YouTube channel. You can write blog content. You can have a podcast. You can go speak on stages. You can get referral partnerships. You can do a million different things. And all of those things work. But the key thing is that you actually like doing it because it does take basically any marketing strategy takes like consistently doing the thing for it to really work and you improving at it. So pick a marketing strategy that you enjoy, and it's going to make your life so much easier.
I think that's such a good point. And I think people don't spend enough time. They spend too much time thinking about what they should be doing. Like you were saying, I was on Instagram because I thought I had to be.
Yep.
And if it starts to feel like a chore, you're just not going to do it. And it's not going to be effective. I mean, it's no surprise to me that Instagram wasn't bringing you clients.
Same.
Getting what
Looking
you were
back,
enjoying.
Absolutely. It's like I was not doing it very well, honestly. When I enjoy something, I do it so much better. That's the thing when you're your own boss is you don't have a boss to force you to do something. So it gets like really tough to motivate yourself towards something that you dislike. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So you've gotten a few clients in the door. You've started marketing. Let's talk about who you're marketing to. How important do you think niche is? Do you think Squarespace is enough of a niche? What are your thoughts?
Good question. Okay. I don't think that Squarespace alone is enough of a niche anymore. There's this guy named Nomadic Matt, and back in the day, he was like the travel blogger. He was like the main guy, and he was like, I am a travel blogger. And that was his niche. And that was like in 2007 when he started, that was definitely enough of a niche. He was different than the mommy bloggers and the whatever else bloggers. But over time, there are like solo female travel bloggers, and then there are like luxury bloggers, and there's budget travel bloggers, whatever. I think it's the same in the web designer space. As there are more people in the space, we need to define ourselves in different ways. A niche makes it, I know it sounds crazy, it makes it easier to get started faster and to dominate something faster, if that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you want to try to take over the entire world, it might be tough. You want to try to take over, I don't know, your neighbor's backyard, don't do that, but like, it's going to be easier. So same thing with niching.
Right.
So for example, if you're like, I want to serve interior designers, which great niche. I love that niche because they have beautiful work and they also really appreciate design and everything. And
those gorgeous images make beautiful websites.
Exactly,
makes our job easy. Yeah.
Exactly. You could be an Squarespace website designer for interior designers, for example. That's a niche that you could do. I've seen the most random niches though, custom home builders, everything you could imagine, just like little teeny tiny slices of the market. It could be by an industry. It could be by a design style is also totally a niche that you could do. It could be by a personality. It could be even, I've seen people like, they're not even just building websites, they're building kind of like entire online businesses for people. And that's their niche is I'm not, and in that way, you're kind of expanding. It's I'm not just making you a Squarespace website, I'm making you a Squarespace website. And then I'm also going to incorporate that into all these other online softwares and tech that you need to like set up an entire business model, basically. So the moral of the story is if you pick something, one specific thing, it makes it a lot easier. So in terms of if you're trying to figure out, well, where should I do my marketing? Okay, I've picked, I want to say Facebook groups is like your marketing strategy that you've chosen, for example. And that's like, okay, well, which Facebook group do I join? It's very hard to pick if you're just like, I'm a Squarespace designer or something. I could join any Facebook group for any small business anywhere. Like it's just tougher. Whereas if you're, for example, I have one past student, Charlotte, and she decided to niche into authors of traditionally published books. And there was a Facebook group for that. She was the only person who knew anything about websites in that Facebook group. And she just booked herself for a year because of it. And so she was the only person in this very specific niche. And so when you choose something so specific, it makes it easier to figure out where to find your people. Or if you're like, oh, there's this certain, I don't know, whatever industry it is. And they're like, oh, there's this certain conference that they all go to that happens once a year or something. Then cool, go to that conference, for example. And that's, you could just book yourself from that. And people feel like when you're so specific to what they do, it's like, oh, okay, you are literally sometimes the only option. And so that just is powerful too. So if they see you and then they see someone else who just like, well, I do this in 59 other random websites and industries, then it's not as powerful. So if, however, you are not yet ready to commit to a niche, that is fine. And you can also build a business without it. Just know that it makes it easier and faster to build a business with one, but it's not impossible without. In fact, I was definitely one of those people who was resisting the niche for a long time.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
I guess one thing is I did start earlier. And so the thought, oh, Squarespace designer, that's specific. And then it was kind of, but over time it got to be, again, not specific enough. And I was new to business and I just didn't know the benefit of doing it. Looking back now, some like in terms of thinking about like what niche should you choose? Something that I look back at now is, I worked at summer camps for 9 summers, all through high school, all through university. I was like, I know summer camps. I know the industry. I know some people in the industry. I know like the people who kind of run it. And I don't know, it's just, there's events and conferences. And I don't know if there's a Facebook group for that. There maybe is a LinkedIn group for that or something. It's like, I could so easily figure out and just build portfolio pieces that exactly demonstrate that thing. I don't know actually off the top of my head what the software, if there's some specific software that they use for their booking that's the best for summer camps. But if that was the case, then I could go figure out what that software is and then write some blog articles on it and all those things. That just shows you how, if I was to pick something, again, that thought didn't cross my mind at the time, but looking back now, I'm like, well, that's something I had like a lot of experience in, a lot of interest in, and would have made perfect sense. So try to think in your life, is there anything? It can be through past work experience. It can just be through personal interest. Like I'm super into interior design now. So that would be something which I would be like, if I was going to do this again, I'd definitely niche into that. So yeah.
Right. And I think it's worth pointing out too, that that's what makes you more valuable to the client is because
Mhm.
like with the summer camps, and I remembered that story because I have stalked all of your content. If you guys haven't checked out Paige's content, like her blog and the videos too, the YouTube channel is so valuable. There's so much good information in there. And watch the video for Charlotte too, the
Oh,
one
yeah.
who made
Mhm.
the websites for authors. But anyway, yeah, because then when you're building the site, okay, well, you guys are definitely going to need an events page and you're going to need
Mhm.
the summer registration form and you already know the business and the
Yep.
industry. So you're not starting with zero, even though
Yep.
if you might think you are, because you're like, I don't know anything about design, you have all of this life experience.
You also just know, like, so for summer camps, they are having children all summer. They are definitely not rebuilding their website in the middle of the summer, which would be awesome for you if you're like, I want to take the summers off. I want to hang out with my kids or whatever. Perfect. You just wouldn't work the entire summer. Also, because your clients are not down. Same with wedding photographers, they are not down to have their website redesigned in their like busy season. So you also just, and so then you can also speak in your marketing to that, like New Year's coming, all the parents are going to be looking to figure out what to do with little Johnny and this summer or something. Get your website launched by, I don't know, January because that's like the important booking time or something. Like you can, and then again, they just feel so much more understood and heard and everything.
Yeah, much easier and faster to build that way. Very cool.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Fantastic information so far. So now let's talk about money. Let's talk about
Yeah.
pricing.
Yeah.
So how much money is it actually possible to make as a web designer in this day and age, particularly as a Squarespace web designer? What's your, thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So there's there's no there's no scientific research on this or anything. It's not like something like Glassdoor where there's like whatever. But I've done my own research into this, and also I mean some very unscientific research of like going to people's websites and seeing like what seems to be average. And so I would say that like for people who are it also depends based off like location and whatever, but generally beginner designers, especially when they come out of my courses, I'm like, okay, you have skills, you have knowledge, you have all these things. I like at minimum, I'm like, okay, $2 to $3 grand US to start with as a website designer is like a good price point of a mix of your level of skill and knowledge at that time if you're like just beginning and the value that you're like bringing to the client and everything. Now there is a huge range that I can go to from there basically. So there are past students of mine who are doing like 10, 15, 20K per project. And these projects typically take between 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes a month. The one girl who's doing 16K projects, I know she has this like 1 month package. She's doing more than just like the website. I will say this is also interesting. Sometimes people think in order to raise their prices, if they want to do a 10, 15K website or whatever, it's all I need to offer these like I need to offer website, I need to offer branding, I need to offer coffee, I need to offer all these things. It's actually not true. There's one of my students, her name's Freya, and she was doing 10K websites, just a Squarespace website. That was it. And I was like, there we go. There are other examples that I have of past students who are doing Lindsay, who does this entire like month-long package. She's kind of building a website and then she teaches you how to run a city-specific publication. So she will write some articles for you, create a media kit for you. She like has a bit of a course that goes along with it to educate you on the business model. She like tells you how to reach out to like local establishments and like she basically gives you an entire like business in a little like box. So the website is part of it, but it also includes other things. And again, her packages I think right now are like 16K. So yeah, I would say if you have some education, again, not university degree or anything, but like something like one of my courses, then I typically say let's start at 2 to 3 grand and then we can move our way up from there. And then in terms of how much that turns into in a year, depends on how many projects you want to take on and all those things. So anyways, bottom line is it's a pretty well-paid career, which you get to do from home. And it's one of the highest paid online jobs, which is another fabulous thing about it. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, very fun. And it's worth mentioning. So two things. I just want to say it's worth mentioning that you've taught like you have a pool
Yeah.
of research. How many students have you had?
Thousands. I think we
Yeah.
just yeah.
I'm like 5,000.
So I need to do a like giant research project on my own students. We haven't done that yet. We did this like general research study that we did. Research. I mean, we like sent a survey to 100 web designers basically and asked them to fill it out. And so that was both some of my students and other people who are not my students. But we need to get around to doing one just of our own students. That would be really interesting. So
Yeah. Very, very cool. I'd be interested to see those results
me
too.
too.
Yeah. Particularly. Yeah. The other thing is, I just want to ask you one more thing about that pricing thing, because you said something that I think is really, really important. I think people really get lost in like, I want to sell a $10,000 website, so I have to offer the branding and the admin, and I have to go wash their dishes, and like I have to do all these things. And it isn't that as much as it's really about the value you provide and the problem you're solving. And that can be as simple. Oh no, go ahead. So talk more about that.
Okay, so it's totally true. And so over time as a website designer, when you're like just starting, this isn't really in your brain so much. And it's just like, I build a website, and that is the value I'm giving. Over time, as a website designer, web designers start to notice like, oh, I'm kind of giving my clients like business advice or like marketing advice or like guiding them in the strategy, or like they give me the content. I'm like, we need to change it in this way or whatever. And sometimes your clients will also come to you with like a specific problem that they're having. And so it's like, oh, okay, we have 2 full-time customer service people just like answering questions in our inbox. And that's costing us whatever, 40 or 50 grand per person a year or something. And then it's like, if our website better answered questions in the first place, then we wouldn't need, like, those people could do something else, which is not just answering emails all day. And so as a website designer, over time, as you get more experience, you can start to figure, like, you can solve real problems for a business through their website. And that's also when you can get into these like much higher paid projects, just from, you're doing more than just designing a pretty page or whatever. You're like solving business problems for them as well. So yeah. So some people do like, they'll kind of offer, it's like website design, and then there's like business consulting kind of like mixed together.
Yeah. Because you can't be good at building websites without becoming like a master in offers and messaging. Like that just kind of happens because you have to distill it down into and how are we going to graphically represent this into the client journey? And it's like when you learn all of that, it's, you can really offer a client a lot more. So very cool. Anyway, awesome. Very, very, very cool. Okay. So biggest mindset shift that you think new designers need to go through to become successful?
Yeah. Okay. I think this one can depend on your background before you become a website designer, also potentially your age before you become a website designer. So I started straight out of college, which coming straight out of college, you have no money. And so I had not paid people to do services in my life before. Now I do that. And so I'm like happily just spend money on things. But coming straight out of university, I was like, someone will pay me. Coming to what you could charge for a website, you could charge $500, which is what I did for my first website. So I didn't know what I was doing. And so I think that for someone like me, who was like very young or really didn't have a lot of experience of hiring things out or something, people spending $500 seemed like bananas to me. And so I think that a big part of the pricing thing, 1 is your skill, yes, but 2 is like, you now run your own business and you now make your own decisions, and no one tells you there is no boss who tells you this is your salary or something. Like that doesn't happen anymore. And so what you price yourself at is basically what salary you're going to get at the end of the year. It's a huge factor in that. And so I think that depending on your background and depending on your comfort level, or like, have you ever hired someone to do something for you for 5 to 10 grand? If the answer is no, then it's going to take a lot more of the mindset work to realize and be like, oh no, that is literally worth that to someone, which is typically a prerequisite for you actually charging those prices. So yeah, in terms of mindset, that. And then the second huge one is like, I didn't go to school for this, which I think just knowing, again, that if you study computer science, you actually don't even do this job, is like helpful for people to know that it's okay. Yes, we need some education, but that can be something like an online course or just teaching yourself, or 70 hours of YouTube or whatever way you want to do it, knock yourself out.
Say 70 conservative for YouTube.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the other important thing to realize is like, when it comes to those fraudy feelings, like just knowing that, like, I think especially women, I feel like they will often go take every single thing they possibly can before they feel ready. And I'm like, okay, no, that's not good. We need to change something about that. So yeah.
Yeah, especially, and to the school point too, especially even if you got a degree in like graphic design or something, that doesn't prepare you to be a web designer. You don't know all the marketing, you don't know all the UX user experience, you don't know, like it's a very, it's a strangely broad but specific.
Yeah, it's the closest thing that you could study in school. And interestingly, I literally had a conversation just like 2 hours ago with a girl who had like gone and studied that. And then she went and took one of my courses because she's like, I don't know how to run a business. They didn't teach me how to, she's like, they taught me Photoshop, but like, I don't know how to use like Squarespace or like the website builders that small businesses actually want to have like their website on. And also I don't know how to run I don't know how to find clients. I don't know what to do about contracts. I don't know all these like practical things of running a small business. So yeah, even if you study graphic design, you're still even typically, so again, don't think, oh, I don't have a graphic design degree or I don't have a computer science degree, therefore I can't do this. Thankfully, that's not the case anymore.
Right. Oh, for sure. 100%. And that leads in perfectly to my next question, which was, so you said something really intriguing to me about referrals. You did a interview with Erica from Big Pack Creative, and you were talking about referrals, and you were like, as soon as somebody tells me that they get a ton of referrals in their business, I know two things about them immediately. Yeah. Do you want to say what those were?
So first thing is you've produced a great end result. Like if you didn't make a great looking website, then people are not typically going to refer you to their friends, basically. So right. There is something to like the quality of the product is important. The second thing though, which people don't typically think of, is it's not just about the prettiness, it's also about how good the experience was for that client. And the quality of the client experience is in direct reflection of how good you are at operating the back end of your business. So if the project is going over time, if you're like not getting back to emails because you were serving 15 different clients at the same time, and so you're like missing things and things are falling through the cracks, whatever. People like business owners don't refer that to their friends. They don't want to send some other person through this like painful experience that this website that, yeah, maybe it looked good, but it took absolutely way longer than it should have. And it was like really difficult to work with you and everything. So if people are getting a lot of referrals, it's typically because one, they produce a great end result, and two, you have like the back end of your business. You know your process, you know your timeline, you know your pricing, you're maybe serving one client at a time, you are consistently meeting deadlines, you're like you've gone above and beyond. I also like would send my clients gifts and they don't know it beforehand, but it's like they get this thing in the mail and they're like, woo, and that's a great client experience. Or they get like a welcome package and they get all these resources to help them like prepare their content and everything. And so like when you get all of that, that is something where it's someone else would be lucky to get to work with you. And if I have a friend who also needs a website, it's business owners know business owners, then that's when you get referrals. So if you're thinking, why I'm not getting referrals at the moment, one, I feel like the quality of the design is typically actually not the issue. It's more often the second piece. It's more often the like you back end running your business. Because sometimes as creatives, it's like, we love the making pretty things, but the like operational aspect sometimes can be a little challenging.
Oh yeah, for sure. A little challenging, right? Very. I want to talk more about this issue because I found when I started building websites, and I started in 2006, this was the piece to overcome, because we think it's like, well, I've got to learn code, or I've got to learn graphic design, I've got to learn all these things. Oh my, what is SEO? I don't understand. You know, these are the things you think you have to learn. But that's not the stuff that takes you out. The stuff that takes you out is boundaries with clients. How do you learn to say no? And like a project drags on and the client can't make up their mind, and like how do you deal with all these things? And now, because I have been doing this or a version of this since 2006, it's not a problem. I'm, you know, I've got boundaries, I've figured stuff out, I'm good. But the thing that I'm great at is delivering a stellar process. And the thing that blew me away about, but like I said, I'm good at a process because I've been doing this for almost 2 decades. The thing that blew me away about Square Secrets business is you have all of that worked into the structure that you're teaching people. So they don't have to like master boundaries and master how to talk to clients. It's literally you give them this whole like process and structure and calendar and like email templates and like all of these things. And I'm like, this is the gold for a new designer, and most people don't even know it because they're freaked out about design principles. And I'm like, no, this is what you need. So anyway, do you want to talk a little bit more about that at all?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things when people come into the courses, like they get what they expect, and then they also get what they don't realize that they need as well. Is like maybe like some feedback that we get is like, oh my god, I didn't even know that was going to be or like you solved me so many headaches. I could see that it's like, oh, I don't have so many problems because you don't have a problem with your project going off the rails if you have like a very clearly defined process and a very clearly defined like communication that's like going into every aspect of your every touch point with your client, all those things. So yeah. So anyways, Course Secrets Business is the course which teaches all about like how to run a web designer business. And so I'm glad Diane's a past student, and so I'm glad you thought it was useful.
Oh, very super cool, super cool. Definitely a roadmap to success. And had I had that 20 years ago, I would have leapfrogged through literally like 8 years of, stress and pulling my hair. Why am I so broke when I'm working all the time? I don't understand. It would just,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's such a cool course. Last two questions. So this is a little selfish because I just had a
Yeah.
conversation with someone who was telling me that she didn't believe in business plans. And I was like, what? I was like, I don't, I'm like, "Okay." What are your thoughts? Because you've built
Mm.
really quite the empire, and I follow so much of what you do very, very closely. Like you've got a free boot camp coming up. I go
Mm.
to every single one because it is such a master class in like how to market. You're so good at what you do.
Yeah.
What's your thought on being intentional around your business and having business
Mm.
goals?
Okay. Okay, let me say, okay, so business plan and then intentional about business and business goals. So a business plan is probably a good idea, but I didn't know how to write a business plan. So I didn't make a specific, I've literally never, I had to write a business plan once for a visa, and that's I wrote it and gave it in to get the visa and never. But anyways, I guess I have in a way, like in terms of figuring out goals and being intentional and everything. Yes, definitely very specific about that. But like a fancy business plan is never something that I had really. I don't know, business plan like sounds so professional. And like I do make very conscious decisions. And I guess maybe that's what goes into a business plan, but it's never been in a plan format. But yeah, I don't know. What do you want to know about like the goals or the intention or what?
Do you feel like that's important? Because I feel like
Mm,
I'm sliding from, for me personally, I started this a couple years ago. I was like, do I want to do website design again? Can I do this without burning out? It
mm,
was like a journey back into, and so I was just kind of coasting. And
mm,
all my clients are referrals. I really haven't started marketing. This is my
mm,
first big push. And
mhm,
I'm like, I'm having to change my mindset into, okay, now it's go time. And
mhm,
yeah. So anyway, so what are your thoughts on that? Like when you start a launch or when
mhm.
you're starting to do something, do you have an end goal?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, okay, yeah. So I mean, when it comes to course launches, which is something that we do a lot now in my business, is yeah, believe me, you don't plan like good luck. That is not going to go well. I am by nature a very organized person. And so if I do something, then I try to make a template out of it. And like our Asana is the most like mind-blowingly organized thing you could ever imagine. And so I think if you're going to take on, also going back to website design projects, if you're going to take on a website design project and you don't have a to-do list, basically, like you're going to forget something and it's not going to go well. And they're going to be like, oh, I didn't realize this would take me so long or whatever. And especially like if you get into more complicated projects, if you want to launch a course or do anything more complicated in your business, you're going to want to like Asana is literally the most game-changing thing in the world. Using it properly too, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, now like this thing is planned. And also coming back to, I guess, business planning. I mean, every year at the end of the year, I do make a plan for what's going to happen in the new year. So it's like we've marked out, okay, what are we selling when in the year? How do we like space this out over the year? What content is going to lead into those things? And what's our revenue projection? What do we need to make? What is like a good, better, best, whatever. So yeah, I guess there is, again, it also developed over time though. When I started, it was just like, I offer a service and people pay me money and it just developed. So if you don't have the most amazing business plan or the most like fanciest looking Asana project templates or whatever, don't stress, it comes with time. But I think being conscious of it, I do think that had I been disorganized and not made plans and templatized things, like I could never have gotten the business to where it is now for sure.
Yeah, it's tough to scale. If you're not putting the systems in
Yeah,
place as you go,
it's
it's
not.
tough to scale.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Even
mean,
even one-to-one,
yep.
even as a one-to-one service, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Okay. And so one more thing on that note. So one of the other things that I always amazes me about following you and like looking at your content and stuff, and we talked about this before we got on the call, was like you seem to really value simplicity,
Mm.
which, and I said like that's not my way because I like to look for problems and make things as difficult as possible, which doesn't always serve me. So would you talk a little bit about like how simplicity plays a role in your
Mm.
business, and that I think will also give people an insight into how you teach and what's important to you and what's
Mm.
in your course and also what's coming up in the bootcamp.
Yeah. So I definitely designed what I would call like a lifestyle first business. So it's like my life comes before the business, not the other way around. And so I think in order to do that, I take what I call a lazy efficient strategy. Like I'm all about efficiency. And if I can find an easier way to achieve the same goal, like I'm going to do that. And I'm always looking for how to make it simple, or oh, can I just reuse that same thing? And so, as you mentioned, you've gone to our, say, boot camp many, many times, and many people have, and they still enjoy it. And some other people think, oh, I need to come up with totally new whatever every single time. And I'm like, not really. So like if people are still, I mean, there is a point at which you need to change things in your business. Yes, of course. But I think that sometimes we overcomplicate things. And so maybe just, and you probably have a gut feeling of this one. This isn't like you, if you just sat in a quietly by yourself with a notebook and you wrote down, is there something which I'm making harder than it has to be? Or like, or I think that's also useful is if you look at other people's businesses and you're like, just notice that they offer this one thing and just that one thing, and they're highly successful or killing it or whatever. It's like, well, maybe I don't need to have 59 different offers or something. So yeah, I do think that when I see people, like when I see highly successful business owners go and launch another, like if they like finish one business or sell it or whatever, they go start another one, like they make simple offer, like very, like they offer one thing, one price to one person, and it's just, and they repeat stuff in the business and everything. And so I think that oftentimes I've definitely been guilty of like, ooh, shiny object or whatever, but I try to rein myself in. And so every year in my annual planning, I'm like, what did not lead to the result that I wanted? And that often like identifies to me like probably wasn't worth it. Or also I look at, okay, where's the revenue actually coming from? And do I have something which I'm selling which isn't really whatever? And like, is that because I need to fix something about this? Or is that because it just, I'm just not known for that? Coming back to like niche and stuff, it's like, I am known as the person who teaches you Squarespace and how to be a web designer. And so it's like, I'm known for those two things. And so that often, it just means that I don't know, the momentum just builds over time, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you definitely get more efficient too as you go if you're really like hyper focused. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so I love that. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the boot camp that's coming up because it's totally free. It's a 3-day like extravaganza event into how to be a web designer. I know it's amazing. So, yeah, give us a
Yeah,
little
okay. Well, you basically said there. Yeah, so it's a 3-day extravaganza on how to be a web designer. Yeah, so basically we have it's called the Profitable and Productive Web Designer Bootcamp. It happens live. It's such a good time. It all goes down inside of a Facebook community. And so you have a bunch of, if you feel kind of like alone in your business sometimes, or like you're the only one like who's doing this thing or whatever, it's a really great place to just one, feel not alone, and two, get some incredible education and do some really impactful homework as well. I will assign you homework. You can do it or not do it, but I'm just telling you, it's going to be worth your while if you do. So yeah, the first day session, we're talking about like the basics of setting up a web designer business. Day 2, we're talking about profit and how to ensure that you are making profit in your business. And then day 3 is all about the finding clients situation. So some 3 key things that you kind of need in order to like build a successful business foundation, let's say. And we also have a giveaway happening in there. So we're going to give you a bunch of one lucky winner who does the homework for all 3 days is going to receive basically all like the startup tools and software and everything that you need to start a web designer business. It's worth like $1,500 or something. So yeah, that's happening at bootcamp. It's a really good time. So definitely come join. And that's Q&As and yeah, Diane's also going to be there. So
yes, I'm going to be there talking about all the things. Yeah, and I want to give a quick plug too because it's worth noting that even if you've been at this while, I mean, there's a reason it's called like profitable and productive web designer because it's even if you've been at this while, it's still really useful. I've been to every single one you've ever done because even after I bought Square Secrets Business, I still kept coming because it's a very fun time. It's a very good time, but it's so nice to hear what other designers are doing. I never miss the panel. Love the panel one.
Yeah.
Right. There's so much good information and it's just nice to be around other people who are trying to do this crazy job and, get some community and stuff, even in the Facebook group and stuff. I hang out in there. It's always fantastic.
Good time. Nice people for sure. So yeah, come hang out with Diane and I will put the link below.